This is a long, calm collection of 100 Easter eggs, hidden details, and small secrets from Silo, gathered so you can drift off while wandering slowly through everything the show has quietly tucked into its buried world. Some of these are details most viewers miss on a first watch. Some are pieces of foreshadowing that only make sense once you know the ending. Some come from the third season that is unfolding right now. Some are connections to the Wool books the series is based on, and a few are behind-the-scenes facts about how the show was made. Everything here touches on all 3 seasons, so treat it as a full spoiler warning for the whole story so far. We will count slowly from 1 to 100, with no rush and no need to remember any of it, so settle in, get comfortable, and let the secrets of the silo carry you off to sleep. Hidden details and foreshadowing. 1. The little duck-shaped Pez dispenser is one of the most important objects in the entire series, and it is astonishing how easy it is to overlook. It first appears as a forbidden relic tied to George Wilkins, a small piece of the old world, in a place where such things are treason, and it seems at first like nothing more than a quirky antique. Then, in the flashback to the world before, that very same duck dispenser passes between a congressman and a journalist hundreds of years earlier, which quietly ties the founding of the silos directly to the story we are watching in the present. A cheap plastic toy becomes a bridge across 3.5 centuries. Once you know what the dispenser means, it stops being a background curiosity and becomes one of the show's biggest clues, a thread that connects the people who built this world to the people trapped inside it. The show trusts you to remember a duck and rewards you for it much later. 2. The great screen in the cafeteria, the one that shows the grey and lifeless surface, is treated by every resident as a simple window on the outside world. It is anything but a window. The image is a feed that the silo controls completely, a single carefully chosen picture of a dead world, and the show plants that unsettling idea very early, long before we understand just how far the deception goes. When we later learn that the visors of the cleaners also show a false world, the pattern snaps into focus, that the silo lies about the outside in the most literal way possible, by simply painting the picture it wants its people to see. The most trusted image in the entire silo, the one everyone points to as proof the world is dead, is the very first lie the show shows you. Everything else grows out of that screen. 3. Almost every person sent out to clean swears beforehand that they will never wipe the lens, that they will refuse the silo one last gesture of obedience, and almost every one of them cleans anyway. This haunting pattern is established in the very first episode, and it is not truly explained until much later, when we learn that the helmet's visor shows the dying a beautiful green and living world instead of the grey ruin that is really there. On a rewatch, those early cleanings become quietly devastating, because each of those people is wiping the lens out of wonder and gratitude, gazing at a paradise that was never real, wanting to reveal that beauty to everyone still trapped inside. The cleaning is the show's central mystery, seeded from the start and paid off with heartbreak, and it colors every death on that hillside once you understand it. 4. The heat tape is one of the smallest objects in the show, and one of the most important, holding the literal difference between life and death. It supplies the cleaners with sealing tape that is designed to fail, so that every protective suit breaks down within minutes of reaching the surface, and the cleaner always dies. Watch closely, and you will notice the strange weight the story places on tape long before you understand why it matters so much. It is mechanical superior heat tape, quietly swapped in by the people who love Juliet, that lets her survive on the surface where every cleaner before her has died. A humble roll of tape, mentioned almost in passing, turns out to be the single object that keeps the heroine alive, a perfect example of how this show hides enormous stakes inside tiny details. 5. The water that everyone in the silo drinks is not nearly as innocent as it appears. The show slips in the chilling truth that something is added to the silo's water supply to dull people's memories and keep them from recalling the world that came before. And once you know it, every ordinary scene of characters drinking becomes unsettling. The clearest clue is Gloria Hildebrandt, the elderly woman who only becomes lucid and able to speak forbidden truths after she has been kept off the treated water for a while. The fog that hangs over the entire population, the vague forgetfulness that keeps them docile, is something they swallow every single day without suspecting a thing. It is one of the silo's most powerful tools of control, hidden inside the most basic necessity of life. 6. Medical is presented as the kindest and gentlest place in the silo, and that gentleness is exactly what hides one of its cruelest programs. The forced sterilizations carried out on chosen women under the cover of routine care are performed by trusted doctors, including Juliet's own father, Pete Nichols. This means the department that delivers the silo's children and tends its sick is also the quiet instrument that decides which family lines will continue and which will end. The detail reframes every warm bedside moment in the show, because the same hands that heal are the hands that harm, and the residents hand over their bodies to healers who secretly serve the silo's darkest designs. The kindest face of the silo turns out to be one of its most dangerous. 7. The silo runs exactly 144 levels deep, a number worth listening for, because the entire society is shaped by that vertical distance. The wealthy and powerful live near the top, close to the light of the great screen, while the engineers and laborers live far below, near the heat and noise of the machines. A journey from top to bottom can take most of a day on foot, and where a person is born along that staircase tends to decide the whole shape of their life. That single spiral staircase, connecting all 144 levels, becomes both the silo's lifeline and, eventually, the target of the rebellion, when the rebels realize that splitting the stairs splits the silo itself. 8. Around 10,000 people live inside the silo, a number the show returns to again and again. And it is not merely set dressing. That population is a deliberate part of the silo's design, a carefully managed size for what is, in truth, a long-controlled experiment in human survival. The number lands even harder once the show reveals that there are many silos, because it means tens of thousands of lives across the network are being run the very same way, each community believing itself alone. A figure that sounds at first like simple world-building slowly reveals itself as evidence of the cold, deliberate scale of the founder's plan. 9. When Juliet finally walks over the crest of the hill at the end of Season 1, the reveal is not only that the world outside is a dead grey ruin, but that her silo is just one of dozens sunk into the same poisoned ground. The camera pulls back to show tower after tower, and the show later confirms the number at 51 silos, all linked and all hidden from one another. In a single shot, the story you thought you were watching, one community and one lie, becomes something vastly larger and stranger, an entire buried civilization of isolated silos. It is one of the greatest reveals in the series, and it reframes everything that came before it. 10. The silo was built 352 years before the present day, a number that quietly matches the Season 2 flashback in a way careful viewers will catch. When the story leaps back to the congressman and the journalist in the world before, it is landing almost exactly 352 years earlier, which confirms that the flashback is showing the very era in which the silos were founded. It is a small piece of arithmetic hidden in plain sight, the kind of detail that rewards anyone paying attention, tying the deep past of the before times directly to the buried present. The show does the math so that you can, if you are listening. 11. The Pact, the silo's sacred rulebook, is quoted and obeyed almost like scripture, governing what is legal, who may have children, and what happens to those who break the rules. What is easy to miss is that no living resident ever chose it or agreed to it. It was written long ago by the founders and handed down through the generations, which means the document that shapes every single life in the silo is not a contract the people made, but a set of instructions written for them by others. Once you see the pact that way, its whole meaning shifts. Every rule that seems to protect the community also quietly serves the silo's control, teaching each generation what to fear and what to never question. The reverence the residents feel for the pact is itself part of the design, because a people who worship the rules that cage them are far harder to free than a people who merely fear them. The rulebook does not just govern the silo, it programs the minds inside it. 12. The safeguard. The mechanism that can flood an entire silo with poison is one of the darkest pieces of the whole design, and the show quietly reveals that the gas travels through a system of pipes. That detail matters enormously, because pipes can, in theory, be blocked. It is exactly how Solo's family survived the death of Silo 17, sealing off their corner of the structure while everyone else was killed. The idea that the silo's ultimate weapon has a physical weakness is planted almost casually, but it changes the stakes of the entire war. It means the safeguard is not an unstoppable act of God, but a machine, and machines can be fought, jammed, or turned off by someone who understands them. In a show whose heroine is an engineer, a weapon that runs through pipes is a weapon with a crack in it, and that crack is a seed of hope buried in the silo's most terrifying secret. 13. Deep beneath the silo sits the legacy, a hidden vault holding the memory of the world before, filled with fine paintings, leather-bound books, recordings of music, photographs of a living planet, and even a model of the solar system. It is a strange thing for a system built entirely on erasing the past to carefully preserve, and that contradiction is the clue. Someone among the founders wanted the truth to survive, locked away for a future generation deemed ready to receive it. The legacy also reframes the whole purpose of the shadow, the chosen successor who is meant to study it in secret. The vault is a library of everything the silo has taken from its people, kept from the very ones it belongs to, which makes it both a treasure and a wound. It is proof that the founders knew exactly what they were burying and chose to keep a record of it, hidden in the dark, waiting. 14. Salvador Quinn's coded letter, discovered by Lucas in the vault, is written as a book cipher, where each number points to a specific word on a specific page of a particular book. The detail is easy to breeze past, but it carries a quiet genius, because it means the founders hid the truth inside the exact kind of object the silo forbids. To read the message, a person would have to seek out a banned book, marking themselves as a rule breaker just to reach the secret. This makes the cipher a filter as much as a message. The truth is protected not by a lock, but by the residents' own trained fear of relics and forbidden knowledge, so that only the curious and the defiant, the very people the silo most wants to catch, can ever read it. A founder who hides a message this way is a founder who trusts rebels over loyalists, which raises the haunting question of whose side Salvador Quinn was truly on. 15. When Lucas finally encounters the algorithm in the hidden depths beneath the silo, the machine addresses him by name. It is a brief moment, easy to let slide past in the tension of the scene, but it is one of the most chilling details in the entire series. It proves the system does not watch the population as a faceless crowd, but tracks individuals, one by one, knowing exactly who is climbing toward the truth. That single spoken name changes how you read every camera and every rule in the silo. It means the surveillance is not passive, but intelligent. A mind that recognizes faces, remembers who asks dangerous questions, and decides what to do about them. The algorithm is not a tool that records, it is a presence that knows, and the moment it says Lucas's name, the silo stops feeling like a place with cameras and starts feeling like a place with a watcher. 16. Lucas spends his nights in the cafeteria, charting the faint points of light that appear on the great screen after dark, treating them like stars to be mapped. It is a small, gentle habit that is easy to overlook, but it marks him from the very start as one of the rare curious minds in the silo. Someone who looks up and wonders in a world built to keep people looking down and staying quiet. That same curiosity is exactly what pulls him into the story's deepest and most dangerous secrets. The lights he studies are a mystery in themselves, whether they are real stars, the surface installations of other silos, or something stranger, and his need to understand them is the thread that leads him to Bernard, to the vault, and to the algorithm. His stargazing is not just a character quirk, it is the seed of his whole arc, the wonder that makes him both special and doomed. 17. Long before she ever becomes sheriff, Juliet is the engineer who saved the silo's failing generator, and that reputation quietly shapes everything that follows. She dared to shut the enormous machine down completely in order to repair it properly, plunging the entire silo into darkness and cold for a terrifying stretch, and then brought it roaring back to life. It was an act of nerve that no one else would attempt. That backstory is more than color. It is a blueprint for who Juliet is. She is the person willing to risk total shutdown to fix what is truly broken, to make everyone sit in the dark, if that is what a real repair requires. The silo itself becomes the ultimate broken machine she cannot leave alone, and her willingness to plunge everything into darkness for the sake of a true fix foreshadows exactly the kind of danger she will become to the system. 18. When Alison Becker walks out to clean, she does something no one expects, wiping the lens, and then continuing up the slope and over the hill, and her body is never found among the others on the ground. That single unresolved absence is the quiet engine of the entire series. It is the detail that plants doubt in Holston, that will not let him rest, and that eventually drives him to follow her. The show never lets that thread fully close, and that is the point. A body that is never accounted for is a question that cannot be answered from inside the silo, a small hole in the story that the whole mystery leaks through. Alison walking over the hill is the first crack in the silo's certainty, and everything Juliet later uncovers flows, in a sense, from the fact that one woman simply kept walking. 19. Holston, the very sheriff who upholds the silo's law, names an engineer from the deepest level of the silo, a woman he has never even met, as his successor before he goes out to clean. It is a choice that baffles the entire court and seems almost random at first. A lawman handing his badge to a stranger from the bottom of the world. Yet that strange decision is the hinge the whole story turns on. Holston has been quietly pulled toward the truths George and Juliet were chasing, and in naming her, he passes on not just a badge, but an investigation and a doubt. The silo's careful order is undone, in the end, by a dying man's unexpected choice to trust someone the system would never have chosen, an engineer stubborn enough to follow the mystery all the way down. 20. Juliet's mother, Hannah, hangs over the whole series as a quiet, painful absence, a clever and inventive woman lost to suicide when Juliet was young. What is easy to miss is how much her mind matters, because Hannah was the kind of person who built things and tried to see the world more clearly than the silo allows. In a place ruled by a fake window and a hidden truth, the simple act of trying to see more sharply is dangerous. That detail suggests the family's threat to the silo did not begin with Juliet, but with a mother who may have looked too closely at the world and been broken by what she glimpsed. Juliet inherits not only her grief, but her curiosity and her stubbornness, which means the silo may have been trying to silence this family for 2 generations. Hannah's quiet tragedy is the hidden root of the daughter's rebellion. 21. The object that helps set the whole story in motion is a piece of the old world showing a green and living planet, whether glimpsed in a relic, a scrap of footage, or the images hidden on George's drive. In a world where the only permitted view of the outside is a grey and lifeless ruin on the cafeteria screen, a single honest image of a living world is the most dangerous thing imaginable. That is why the silo hunts such objects so fiercely. An argument can be dismissed, and a rumor can be silenced, but a real image of blue sky and green grass is proof that outlasts any lie, evidence a curious mind cannot unsee. The green world relic is small enough to hide in a pocket and powerful enough to crack the foundation of the entire silo, which is exactly why it is treated as one of the gravest crimes a person can commit. 22. Solo, the lonely survivor Juliet meets in the ruins of Silo 17, has a real name that carries quiet weight. He is Jimmy Conroy, the son of the former head of IT in his silo, which means the broken man hiding in the dark was born into the very department that holds the deepest secrets and controls the most dangerous machinery. His family's access is the reason he survived at all. The name Solo, the one he goes by when we meet him, is its own small heartbreak. It is not the name he was born with, but the identity that decades of total isolation carved into him, a label that says everything about what the silo's collapse did to a frightened boy. The distance between Jimmy Conroy and Solo is the measure of everything he lost. A childhood name and a lonely nickname sitting on opposite sides of a catastrophe. 23. Solo survived the death of Silo 17 because his parents hid him behind the heavy sealed door of the IT vault and blocked the pipe that would have carried the poison gas into their corner of the structure. It is a direct, practical use of the safeguard's one weakness, the same detail the show quietly established earlier, turning an abstract mechanism into a family's desperate act of love. That single choice defines Solo's entire life. The vault that saved him also became the tomb of his childhood, sealing him away from a dying world and leaving him alone for decades among the silence. The pipe his parents blocked bought him survival at the cost of everything that might have made survival bearable, which is why his story is less a rescue than a slow, lonely sentence. The mechanism that kills silos is, in his case, the thing that trapped a boy in an empty one. 24. Silo 17 is built to the exact same design as Silo 18, with the same layout, the same spiral staircase, and the same departments in the same places. This sameness is easy to take for granted, but it is deliberate and meaningful, because it lets the show do something eerie, sending Juliet walking through a perfect ruined twin of her own home. Every step she takes through Silo 17 is a step through what her own silo could become if everything fell apart. A preview of collapse, written in flooded corridors and empty halls. The identical design also quietly reinforces the larger truth that the silos are not unique communities, but mass-produced copies, 51 identical experiments running side by side. Walking through the dead twin of home is one of the show's most unsettling ideas, hidden inside a simple choice about set design. 25. Juliet's dive into the flooded depths of Silo 17 is rigged with real, tactile detail. A breathing tube fed from above, a rope tied to her body, and a bell she can ring to be pulled back like a fish on a line. The care taken with the mechanics, including the danger of rising too fast and suffering the bends, turns the sequence into a masterclass of slow, mounting tension. What makes the scene land is how that careful setup is then turned against her. The same rope meant to save her is cut, the air stops, and she is forced to swim upward too fast through freezing black water, barely surviving. A rescue rig built with such attention becomes the instrument of a betrayal, and the little bell that was supposed to mean safety becomes a detail you remember with dread. The show earns its terror by first showing you exactly how the system was meant to work. 26. Judge Meadows, the cold and severe head of judicial, was herself once a shadow, one of the chosen few taught the full truth of the silo. This revelation quietly recolors every earlier scene she is in, because the fearsome woman enforcing the law is, underneath, a person the truth already broke long ago. Her severity, her distance, and her reliance on the silo's numbing comforts all read differently once you know she reached the center of the mystery and could not carry it. Meadows is a living warning of what waits for anyone who learns too much, a preview of what Lucas might become, propped up as an enforcer precisely because a broken keeper is still useful. The judge who seems to hold power is in truth one of the people the silo's secrets have most thoroughly hollowed out. 27. In a strange, quiet moment, the silo's hidden vault of secrets, admits Robert Sims's wife Camille, yet refuses Sims himself. It is easy to miss in the flow of the scene, but it carries enormous implications because the loyal enforcer, who has given everything to the system, is judged less worthy of its deepest truths than the wife standing beside him. That single door, opening for one and closing for the other, suggests the system sees something in Camille that it does not see in Sims. It hints that she may be far more significant to the story than she first appears. A quiet mind the silo values in a way it never valued its faithful muscle. A moment that lasts only seconds plants the idea that the real player in that marriage may not be the man everyone fears, but the woman no one is watching. 28. Martha Walker, the agoraphobic engineer who has not left her workshop in years, pulls off one of the cleverest quiet acts in the show. Brought in to negotiate with Bernard, she pretends to discuss one plan out loud while secretly passing the real plan to Knox, using a subtle hand language, a rebellion hidden inside a conversation meant to cover it. The detail rewards anyone watching her hands rather than only listening to her words, because the true message is happening in silence, in plain sight. It also reveals the depth of Walker's courage. A woman who cannot bear to cross a doorway, yet is brave enough to deceive the most powerful man in the silo to his face. The scene is a small masterpiece of misdirection, and it proves that the quietest person in the room can be running the most dangerous plan. 29. The rebels' plan is not, as many viewers first assume, to blow up the generator, but to destroy a section of the Great Spiral Staircase, splitting the silo in two, so that Judicial's raiders cannot return to the lower levels. The distinction matters, because it turns the uprising into a fight over the silo's single most important structure, its one connecting spine. That plan is also where the season's most personal sacrifice happens. When the trigger is compromised, at the worst possible moment, it is Pete Nichols, Juliet's estranged father, who assembles it with his own hands and dies in the blast to make the rebellion possible. A tactical choice about where to place a bomb becomes the stage for a father's redemption, and the destruction of the stairs becomes forever tied to the death of the man who gave everything to protect his daughter's cause. 30. In the burning airlock of the Season 2 finale, Juliet survives, while Bernard almost certainly does not, and the reason is hidden in a detail you can see if you look. Juliet is wearing a suit built from a firefighter's gear and sealed with the strong heat tape, giving her a real chance to walk out of the flames, while Bernard, in an ordinary suit, has almost nothing between his body and the fire. The careful difference in their protection quietly tells you who was meant to survive that chamber, long before the show confirms anything. It is a piece of visual foreshadowing that rewards attention, the kind of detail that lets a careful viewer read the outcome in the equipment rather than the dialogue. The fire that ends the season is not random. It is a test the show has already stacked in Juliet's favor, if you noticed what she was wearing. 31. The Season 2 flashback to the world before shows a congressman and a journalist discussing a radiological attack and the looming threat of a dirty bomb. The first time the silo's origin feels like real history rather than distant myth. It grounds the apocalypse in a recognizable world of politics, fear, and spin, rather than some vague ancient disaster. What makes the scene an Easter egg rather than just exposition is how much it withholds. The journalist even questions whether the attack was real, which quietly plants the idea that the official story of the end of the world may be as constructed as the silo's fake sky. The before times are not shown as a simple tragedy that happened to humanity, but as a moment thick with lies and hidden hands, hinting that the founders may have shaped the very catastrophe they claim to survive. 32. The word cleaning itself is one of the show's quietest and darkest touches, a piece of language doing enormous work. A brutal execution, sending a person out to die on a poisoned hillside, is wrapped in the gentle, almost tender language of wiping a lens as a final service to the community. That euphemism is so soft that the residents rarely flinch at the horror underneath it, which is exactly the point. The silo controls its people not only through fear and lies, but through the words it gives them, turning murder into a chore and obedience into a kindness. Naming the ritual cleaning instead of killing is a small act of propaganda, repeated so often that no one questions it, a reminder that in the silo, even language is part of the cage. 33. Paul Billings, the deputy assigned to Juliet, hides a condition the silo calls the syndrome, a tremor and illness stigmatized enough to destroy his career and his standing if it were ever revealed. The detail is easy to pass over as simple character texture, but it does quiet, important work. A secret this dangerous is also a leash, because a man who could lose everything if exposed is a man who can be controlled by anyone who knows. Billings, assigned by Judicial to watch Juliet, is therefore a good person, kept obedient by fear, which makes his slow turn toward her genuinely brave and genuinely risky. His hidden illness is the invisible chain the silo can pull whenever it needs him to obey, and the fact that he inches toward the truth anyway is the quiet heroism buried in the detail. Season 3 Secrets. 34. In the world before, the congressman at the center of the founding is named Daniel Keene in the show, but in Hugh Howey's books the character is called Donald. The change was made deliberately by the show's creator to avoid unwanted comparisons to a certain real-world president who shares that first name, a small adjustment meant to keep the audience focused on the story rather than the politics of the present. That quiet change becomes the setup for one of the third season's cleverest winks. It is the kind of behind-the-scenes decision most viewers would never know about, yet the show finds a way to fold it directly into the drama, turning a simple name swap into a piece of foreshadowing and a gift to book readers. The name Daniel carries a hidden history, and the season is not done with it. 35. That name change pays off when Charlotte Keene, recovering from a severe memory loss, accidentally calls her brother by his original name from the books, Donald. It is a brief slip, but it does two things at once, advancing the plot by revealing just how deep her amnesia runs, and quietly acknowledging the adaptation choice to fans who know the source material. For book readers, hearing the name Donald spoken aloud is a delightful jolt, a wink that says the show knows exactly what it changed, and why. For everyone else, it is a chilling sign that Charlotte's mind is not fully her own, that pieces of her are surfacing from somewhere beneath the version she now lives as. A single misspoken name works as both an Easter egg and a clue, which is the show at its most confident. 36. The third season draws heavily on Hugh Howey's novella Shift, the second book in the trilogy, which fills in the origin of the silos and the world that came before. Knowing that source shapes what the season is really about, because Shift is less a story of survival inside a silo and more a story of how such a monstrous system came to be built in the first place. That is why the season leans so hard into the before times, the politics, and the founders. It is adapting the part of the saga that answers the biggest question of all, not what is happening in the silo, but why the silo exists. For anyone watching the past timeline unfold and wondering where it is going, the answer is written in a book published years ago, and the season is slowly bringing it to the screen. 37. One of the season's deepest reveals is that the technology behind the silo's memory control was not born as a weapon at all. It was created by a man named Viktor Krenkovich as a way of helping people cope with trauma, a genuine attempt to ease suffering by softening or erasing the worst memories a person carries. That origin is quietly tragic, because it means the silo's cruelest tool began as an act of mercy. A therapy meant to heal was twisted into an instrument of control, which fits the show's larger theme perfectly, that the silo takes good and human things, care, memory, love, and turns them into cages. The horror of the memory wipe is deepened by the knowledge that someone, once, only wanted to help. 38. The season reveals that the memory erasing technology was co-opted by the government for covert military operations, allowing soldiers to have their memories wiped after classified missions, then rebuilt afterward with the help of loved ones. The chilling implication is that a person rebuilt this way becomes the sum of other people's memories of them, rather than their own. That idea reaches straight into the heart of the whole silo. If a mind can be erased and then reassembled from the outside, from what others say happened and who others say you were, then identity itself becomes something the powerful can author. The silo does not only control what its people know about the world, it may control who they believe themselves to be, which is a far more intimate and terrifying kind of power than any lock or camera. 39. The season finally explains why relics are so fiercely forbidden, and the answer is more than simple control of information. Physical objects from the world before can act as triggers, jolts of memory that help a person whose mind has been wiped to reject the programming and reclaim fragments of who they truly were. This reframes every relic in the series, including the little duck Pez dispenser, as something genuinely dangerous to the system. It explains why the algorithm demands that all relics be destroyed, because each surviving object is a potential key, a spark that could wake a buried memory and unravel a carefully rebuilt mind. The forbidden objects are not just illegal, they are antidotes, and the silo cannot allow the cure for its control to remain in circulation. 40. The season ties the before times directly to the silo through Helen, the journalist from the flashbacks, who is revealed to have kept a Pez dispenser and to have resisted the memory reset, becoming an outlier who held on to her true self. She is sent to Silo 18, which means a figure from the very founding of this world may have lived, in secret, among its prisoners. That revelation collapses the distance between the deep past and the present in a single stroke. Helen is not just a face in a history lesson. She is a thread reaching directly into the silo, a person who remembered when she was meant to forget, carrying a small plastic relic as her anchor. The Pez dispenser stops being a curiosity and becomes her lifeline, the object that let one of the founder's own witnesses keep her memory in a world built on erasing it. 41. Juliet's own memory loss, which opens this chapter of the story, is no longer just a personal tragedy once you understand the memory wipe technology. Her amnesia mirrors the very system the season reveals, placing the show's heroine inside the same machinery that has been used to control soldiers and silos alike. That connection raises the season's central tension for her. A woman who nearly died to uncover the truth now has to find her way back to it through a fog the silo itself may have engineered, which turns her recovery into a race. If relics can trigger memory, then Juliet's path back to herself may run through the very objects the silo once destroyed, making her personal struggle a direct collision with the system's deepest defense. 42. Apple built a hidden interactive website to promote the season, styled like an old computer desktop full of files and clues, and its address is a quiet piece of the story itself. The site is called "How Did We Lose This World?", a phrase that echoes the haunting question at the heart of the before times, spoken by the people who watched the old world slip away. The website is packed with cryptic images, exclusive clips, and Easter eggs that connect to the show's wider mystery, rewarding the fans curious enough to explore it. More than a marketing gimmick, its very name frames the whole season's obsession, the slow, sorrowful reckoning with how a living world became a set of buried tombs. The question in the URL is the question the season is trying to answer. 43. The season runs two timelines at once: the buried present of the silo and the unraveling past of the before times, and the real pleasure is watching them slowly converge. Details from the founding era begin to explain mysteries in the present, and objects, names and choices echo across the centuries between them. This structure turns the whole season into a puzzle box, where a moment in the past suddenly illuminates something in the present, and a relic in the silo suddenly gains a history. The two timelines are not separate stories, but two ends of a single thread. And the season's biggest rewards come at the points where they touch. Watching for those connections, the shared objects and repeated phrases, is where the Easter eggs live. 44. Hanging over the present timeline is the threat of another reset, the release of the memory-dulling drugs into the water supply that could wipe the population and start the silo over. It gives Juliet's struggle a ticking clock, because her fight to recover the truth is also a race against the moment the silo could simply erase everyone again. That threat quietly raises the stakes of every relic, every memory, and every act of resistance. If the silo can reset its people at will, then holding on to the truth is not a one-time victory, but a fragile thing that must be protected against erasure. The water that has always been a quiet leash becomes, in this season, a potential weapon of mass forgetting, and the possibility of a full reset is the shadow the whole story now runs beneath. Connections to the books. 45. Silo is based on the Wool trilogy by Hugh Howey, made up of 3 books, Wool, Shift, and Dust. Each covers a different piece of the saga, with Wool telling the story inside the silo, Shift revealing the origins and the world before, and Dust bringing the whole thing to its conclusion. Knowing that structure is a quiet map to where the show is heading, because the series is slowly working its way through the same 3 movements. 46. The story almost did not exist as we know it. Hugh Howey first self-published Wool in the early 2010s as a short standalone story, then expanded it into serialized novellas after readers fell in love with it. Its success as an independent, self-made phenomenon is part of the legend of the series, a reminder that this vast television world grew from a single short story a writer put out on his own. 47. In the books, the character of Walker is an elderly man, one of Juliet's mentors in Mechanical. The show reimagined the role as Martha Walker, a woman who becomes a fierce mother figure and one of the emotional anchors of the story. It is one of the adaptation's most successful changes, deepening the found family at the bottom of the silo and giving the rebellion one of its bravest hearts. 48. The way the silos are destroyed differs sharply between page and screen. In the books, the ultimate threat is weaponized nanotechnology, microscopic machines that can wipe out a population, while the show uses poison gas released through pipes as its safeguard. Both serve the same purpose, but the change gives the show a more tangible, mechanical menace, one with pipes that can be blocked, which fits a story so focused on engineers. 49. Solo's age is different in the source material. In the books, Jimmy was around 16 or 17 during the fall of Silo 17, while the show suggests he was much younger, closer to 11 or 12, with the disaster set further in the past. The change makes the show's Solo an even more heartbreaking figure, a man who was robbed of nearly his entire childhood and left to grow up alone in a dead silo. 50. The algorithm is one of the show's boldest inventions. In the books, it is closer to a simple ranking system, a cold piece of software that scores the silos, but the series transforms it into an advanced artificial intelligence that can speak, recognize individuals, and influence who rises to power. That change turns an abstract mechanism into an active, chilling character, giving the silo a watching mind rather than just a calculating program. 51. The theme of relics and forbidden knowledge is far larger in the show than in the books. The series leans heavily into the idea of information quarantine, of a world where old objects are dangerous and the past is a crime, while the novels treat this more lightly. It is one of the ways the adaptation sharpened its own identity, making the control of memory and history central to the whole story. 52. George Wilkins is a minor figure in the books, but the show expands him into one of the driving forces of the entire narrative, the spark whose death sends Juliet climbing toward the truth. The change reshapes the beginning of the story, around a love and a loss, giving the mystery an emotional engine that the source material handles very differently. 53. Bernard is a more straightforward, obvious antagonist in the books, while the show reveals him gradually, letting the audience wonder for a long time whether he is a villain or a burdened man doing a terrible job. That slower unveiling is one of the series' smartest choices, turning Bernard into a figure the audience argues about, rather than one they simply hate. 54. The books introduce the idea of a control silo, usually called Silo 1, which oversees all the others, a concept the show has been circling carefully. For book readers, the hints of a hidden hand above the individual silos point toward this looming revelation, one of the biggest pieces of the larger design still waiting to fully arrive on screen. 55. In the source material, the people who run the control silo work in long shifts, spending decades in cryogenic sleep between them, which lets a small group of founders and their heirs guide the silos across centuries. It is one of the eeriest ideas in the whole saga, and any hint of shifts, sleep, or watchers who outlive generations is the show reaching toward this book concept. 56. The books contain a destination called Seed, a place where the world has healed, and materials wait to rebuild civilization, prepared for the survivors who make it out. It is the rare thread of hope in a bleak story, the promise that the surface was never lost forever, only locked away, and it is one of the most meaningful ideas the show could eventually bring to life. 57. The grimmest revelation of the books is that the silos are a competition, with only one population meant to inherit the healed world, chosen by an algorithm at a set point far in the future. 51 silos begin, and the plan calls for only one to survive. Every hint of the silos being ranked or judged points toward this dark endgame from the source material. 58. Book Juliet is notably more closed off and hardened than her television counterpart, a mechanic used to relying only on herself, while the show's version is more emotional and openly vulnerable. The change makes the screen Juliet easier to follow through her grief and her fear, trading some of the book characters' flinty distance for a warmth the audience can hold on to. 59. The title of the first book, Wool, carries a quiet double meaning that the show honors. It refers to the wool pads the cleaners use to wipe the lens, the very tool of the ritual at the heart of the story, while also evoking the idea of wool being pulled over the eyes, a world of people kept blind. The name of the whole saga is itself a small piece of wordplay about deception. 60. Judicial in the show is expanded into something close to a secret police force, with far more presence and menace than it carries in the books. The series deepens the political intrigue between the mayor, IT, and judicial into a constant three-way struggle, giving the silo a richer and more paranoid power structure than the source material, where those tensions are quieter. Behind the scenes, 61. The series was developed for television by Graham Yost, the writer and producer known for shows built on careful, slow-burning tension. His hand shapes the whole feel of Silo, its patience, its love of quiet detail, and its willingness to let a mystery breathe across entire seasons rather than rushing to the answer. The measured pace that defines the show is a deliberate creative choice, not an accident. 62. Rebecca Ferguson does more than star as Juliet. She is also an executive producer on the series, which means the show's fierce, grounded heroine is shaped in part by the actor playing her. Her investment behind the camera, as well as in front of it, helps explain why Juliet feels so central and so fully realized. A character guided by someone with a stake in every choice. 63. Tim Robbins, a screen veteran with decades of iconic roles behind him, plays Bernard, and his casting is part of why the character works so well. Robbins brings a soft-spoken, reasonable warmth that makes Bernard's menace creep up on you, a villain who feels like a decent man right until he does not. The gravity he lends the role is a quiet reason the audience keeps arguing about whether Bernard is evil at all. 64. The musician and actor Common plays Robert Sims, the silo's cold head of security, bringing a controlled stillness to the role that makes the enforcer genuinely unsettling. His restraint is the point. A man whose calm surface hides how much of himself he has handed over to the system, and the casting gives Sims a quiet danger that lingers in every scene he watches from the edges of. 65. David Oyelowo plays Holston Becker, the sheriff whose grief opens the entire series, and his performance sets the emotional tone for everything that follows. It is a role that has to make an early exit land with enormous weight, and Oyelowo's quiet devastation as a man who cannot live without the truth about his wife is what gives the first stretch of the show its aching pull. 66. Rashida Jones plays Alison Becker, Holston's wife, whose discovery and cleaning set the tragedy in motion. Known largely for comedy, she brings an unexpected fragility and intensity to Alison's unraveling, making the woman slide from suspicion to certainty to her final walk over the hill feel painfully human. Her casting against type is part of why the opening hits so hard. 67. Steve Zahn plays Solo, the broken survivor of Silo 17, and his casting is a small masterstroke. Zahn balances the character's childlike jitteriness with flashes of grief and menace, making Solo both endearing and slightly unnerving, exactly the mix the role needs. He turns a man who talks to himself in a dead silo into one of the most memorable figures in the whole series. 68. Dr. Pete Nichols, Juliet's father, is played by Ian Glenn, and for fans of a certain other enormous fantasy series, his presence is a quiet treat. Glenn is well known for playing Ser Jorah Mormont in Game of Thrones, which means two of the most beloved prestige genre shows share one gentle, weathered face. It is an accidental Easter egg for anyone who recognizes him. 69. Martha Walker is played by the acclaimed British actor Harriet Walter, who brings enormous depth to a character who barely leaves a single room. Walter makes the agoraphobic engineer feel like the wise, fierce heart of Mechanical, proving that a performer can command the screen through stillness and voice alone. The gravitas she lends Walker is a big part of why the character resonates so strongly. 70. Apple believed in the show enough to renew it for a third and a fourth season at the same time, mapping out the series' path to its conclusion in advance. That vote of confidence means the story is being told with an ending in sight rather than stretched indefinitely. And it signals that the whole saga, like the books, is building deliberately toward a planned finish rather than wandering. 71. Hugh Howey, the author who created this world, remains involved with the adaptation, lending his knowledge of the saga's secrets to the people bringing it to screen. Having the original architect close to the production helps the show plant its long-game clues with confidence, because the people seeding the Easter eggs know exactly where the story is going. The founder of the fictional world quietly guards its future. 72. The silo itself is a triumph of practical set building, with its towering levels and its great spiral staircase constructed as real, physical space rather than left entirely to digital effects. That commitment to a tangible set is part of why the silo feels so heavy and real, a place with genuine depth and weight, and it grounds the actors in a world they can actually move through rather than imagine. 73. The show's deliberately dim, shadowy look is a divisive but purposeful choice, meant to convey the closed-in, sunless reality of life underground. The muted light and heavy darkness are not a flaw, but a mood, immersing the viewer in a world where natural light does not exist and the only sky is a lie on a screen. The visual gloom is the silo's atmosphere made into cinematography. 74. The pacing of the series, often described as slow, is itself a kind of statement. In a television landscape that rewards constant twists, Silo trusts its audience to sit with quiet, to let mysteries simmer, and to find tension in small details rather than endless action. That patience is exactly what makes the show ideal for the calm, drifting viewing this very video is built for. 75. The long gap between seasons became part of the show's story with its audience, a wait that turned every returning viewer into someone hungry to remember the details. That space between chapters is part of why Easter egg hunting and recaps matter so much for this series, because the show rewards the memory of anyone patient enough to hold its threads across the silence between seasons. 76. The episode titles throughout the series are chosen with care, often echoing phrases, objects, or ideas from the story and the books, rather than simply naming events. Paying attention to a title before an episode begins can quietly hint at what matters most in the hour to come. A small layer of meaning laid on top of the story for anyone who looks. The names are part of the puzzle, motifs and small details. 77. Throughout the silo, the residents wear color-coded overalls that mark which department they belong to, a quiet visual language running through every crowd scene. The engineers of mechanical, the workers of supply, the staff of medical, and the rest each carry their own shade, so that a person's whole place in the world is written on their clothes. Once you notice the color coding, the silo's rigid divisions become visible in every frame. A single glance at a crowd tells you who belongs where, and the sight of someone in the wrong colors or moving between worlds like Juliet does quietly signals that the natural order is being crossed. The costumes are a constant, silent reminder of how thoroughly the silo sorts its people. 78. The silo passes its most important knowledge through a system called shadowing, where a chosen successor learns a role and its secrets by following the current holder. It is how the silo renews itself, from the sheriff's office to the deepest keepers of the truth, and the word shadow carries a weight that grows as the story deepens. The system is quietly sinister once you understand it. Shadowing is how the silo ensures its lies survive each generation, taking promising, curious minds and slowly shaping them into the next keepers of the secret. Every shadow is a bet the silo places on its own future, which makes the moment a shadow doubts or refuses one of the most dangerous things that can happen to the system. 79. The porters are the silo's tireless couriers, climbing the great staircase day and night to carry messages, goods, and news between the levels. In a world with no quick way to move information up and down, they are the threads that hold the whole structure together. A living network of feet and memory. That network is easy to take for granted, but it is quietly powerful. The people who carry every message also know who is talking to whom and how news travels, which makes the porters both the silo's nervous system and a potential web of eyes and ears. The humble couriers on the stairs are far more central to how the silo works and how it could be undone than they first appear. 80. Life in the silo runs without any true day or night, since there is no sky and no sun, only lights that brighten and dim on a schedule to mark the passing hours. This detail is easy to forget, but it shapes everything about how the residents live, their sense of time entirely manufactured by the system around them. The controlled light is one more quiet form of control. A people whose very sense of morning and evening is dictated by the silo is a people whose rhythms belong to the machine, not to nature. Even something as basic as the difference between day and night is, in the silo, a thing the authorities decide, a small detail that reveals just how total the environment's grip really is. 81. No child in the silo is born by simple choice. The right to have a baby must be won through a lottery, and even the winners are given only a narrow window to try before the chance passes on. It is presented as a sad necessity for managing a sealed population, a fair matter of luck. Beneath that fairness lies enormous power. A system that decides who may reproduce controls not just the size of the population, but its shape and its future. And paired with the hidden sterilizations, the lottery becomes a mask over a program of selection. The cheerful language of a lottery hides one of the silo's most intimate forms of control: the quiet management of who is allowed to exist at all. 82. The sheriff's badge passes from Holston to Juliet and toward Billings, a small chain of authority that carries a quiet curse. Look at what happens to those who wear it, and a pattern emerges of honest lawkeepers drawn toward the truth and then destroyed, exiled, or forced to run by what they find. The badge is less an honor than a lure. It places its wearer exactly where the silo's secrets are most dangerous, so that the very people whose sense of justice makes them wear it proudly are the ones the office tends to consume. Each holder who is ruined also passes their doubt to the next, which means the cursed badge quietly carries defiance forward even as it destroys the people who pin it on. 83. Beneath the silo's official order runs a black market in relics, forbidden objects from the world before, traded quietly by people willing to risk everything. This hidden economy is a small detail that reveals a whole underworld, a proof that the silo's control is never quite as total as it pretends. The relic trade matters because it is where curiosity and danger meet. Every forbidden object that changes hands is a small act of rebellion and a small risk of exposure, and the dealers who survive in that world often do so at a terrible cost. The black market is the silo's shadow economy, the place where the past refuses to stay buried and where the most dangerous questions quietly circulate. 84. A popular reading of the show holds that the world outside is not uniformly dead, but that only the areas immediately around the silos are kept intentionally toxic, while the wider planet may have healed. This idea, drawn from clues across the series, reframes the poisoned surface as a controlled barrier rather than a natural fact. If it holds, the implication is staggering. The danger that keeps everyone inside would be a manufactured fence, a ring of engineered poison maintained on purpose, with a living world waiting just beyond the hills. It would mean the outside was never the true prison, only the lie about the outside, and that freedom may have always been closer than any cleaner dared to believe. 85. Juliet is defined, again and again, by her relationship with machines, by the simple fact that she cannot leave a broken thing alone. This trait is established early and returns constantly, from the generator to the pumps to the suits she rebuilds. A woman happiest with a tool in her hand and a problem to solve. That instinct is quietly the key to her whole character. The silo is the ultimate broken machine, a system running on lies and failing parts, and Juliet approaches it exactly as she approaches any other malfunction, by refusing to accept that it cannot be fixed. Her identity as an engineer is not just background, it is the reason she becomes the one person capable of taking the whole system apart. 86. The visor inside the cleaning helmet is both the silo's cruelest deception and, in a strange way, its final mercy. It shows the dying a beautiful green world in their last moments, a lie designed to make them clean the lens, and yet it also spares them the sight of the true grey ruin as they die. That doubling is what makes the detail so haunting. The same technology that manipulates a person into serving the silo one last time also grants them a peaceful, beautiful death, so that cruelty and kindness are delivered by the very same screen. The visor is the silo in miniature, control and comfort fused into a single image, and it is impossible to fully hate or forgive. 87. The bodies of past cleaners lie in a row on the hillside outside, visible on the great screen, and even in death they are still working for the silo. Their corpses serve as a permanent warning, daily proof offered to everyone inside that the outside means death, and that leaving is madness. The grim genius of it is that those cleaners died gazing at a false paradise, deceived even in their final moments, while their bodies are used to sell the opposite lie of a deadly world. The dead on the hill are conscripted into the silo's propaganda, betrayed twice over, and it is only when Juliet walks past them and keeps living that the monument turns from a warning into a question. 88. The relics the Flamekeepers guarded are more than sentimental keepsakes. They are, as the story reveals, keys to memory itself. A single honest object from the world before can trigger recollection and help a mind resist the silo's control, which is why the keepers of relics were hunted so mercilessly. This detail ties the whole series together, from the duck Pez dispenser to the hidden drives. The Flamekeepers were not simply nostalgic collectors. They were guardians of the one thing the silo could not fully erase, physical proof of the truth, and their persecution was the silo's attempt to destroy the very antidote to its lies. The relics are memory made solid, which is exactly what makes them so dangerous. 89. Judicial's raiders, the security force that carries out arrests and seizures, are a quiet study in how ordinary people become instruments of fear. They break into homes and drag away neighbors on command, protected by the sense that they are only following orders and enforcing the law. The detail matters because it shows how the silo spreads its cruelty across many willing hands. The raiders are not monsters by nature, but people who have agreed to stop asking questions, which is exactly what lets an unjust system function. Their disciplined obedience is the machinery of oppression made human, a reminder that the silo runs not only on hidden powers, but on ordinary people willing to look away. 90. The great generator at the bottom of the silo is the heart that keeps everyone alive, and also, in a bitter irony, the heart that keeps everyone imprisoned. Without it, the silo would go dark and die, which means the engineers who tend it so faithfully are the ones keeping the cage sealed and running. That doubling gives mechanical its quiet tragedy. The most skilled and devoted people in the silo pour their lives into a machine that sustains a system of lies, maintaining their own prison with pride. Yet the same power hands them the ultimate advantage, because the hands that keep the heart beating are also the only hands that could ever choose to stop it. The generator is both salvation and chain. 91. The reverence the residents feel for the packed borders on the religious, an almost sacred devotion to a set of rules most of them have never questioned. This quiet faith is one of the silo's most effective forms of control, because a people who worship their own cage are far harder to free than a people who merely fear it. That devotion is the detail that makes rebellion so rare and so difficult. To rise up is not only to break the law, but to commit a kind of heresy, to betray something the community treats as holy. The silo's deepest defense is not its walls or its cameras, but the belief it has planted in its people that the rules themselves are sacred and must never be doubted. 92. The silo is quietly defined by the distrust between its levels, the suspicion that runs between the wealthy near the top and the workers of the down deep. This division is not an accident, but a feature, a people kept from uniting because they are taught to resent one another across the great distance of the staircase. That engineered mistrust is one of the silo's most important tools. A population divided against itself, up top against down deep, is a population that cannot easily join together against the powers that rule them all. The class geography of the silo, written into where people are born and how they see each other, is a quiet wall as effective as any door, keeping the many from realizing their shared cage. 93. Each silo is known by a number, and the reveal that Juliet's home is Silo 18, with a ruined Silo 17 nearby, and a network stretching to 51, turns simple digits into a chilling map. The numbers are a detail that quietly conveys the vast, industrial scale of the founder's plan. Naming silos by number rather than by any human title is itself telling. It reflects how the founders see these communities, not as unique worlds, but as units in an experiment, interchangeable and countable. Every time a silo is referred to by its number, the show quietly reminds you that the people inside are, to those above, data points in a design far larger than any one of them can see. 94. When Juliet reaches the surface and refuses to die quietly, she leaves a message for the people watching. a warning that the outside is not safe and that they must not follow. It is a small, powerful moment, the first honest communication ever sent from beyond the door back into the silo. That message flips the meaning of the cleaning entirely. For generations, the surface has been used to lie to the people inside, and here, for the first time, someone uses that same view to tell them a difficult truth. Juliet turns the silo's own window of deception into a channel for honesty, a detail that quietly marks how completely she has broken the pattern every cleaner before her followed. 95. Bernard, at the end, does not simply send Juliet to the airlock, he follows her into it, a choice that says everything about how far his certainty has crumbled. The most powerful man in the silo, the keeper of its secrets, ends up trapped in the same fire as the rebel he fought, his control finally spent. That shared fate is a quiet piece of storytelling. For 2 seasons, Bernard has stood above the danger, sending others out to die, and in the end he is caught in the very ritual he administered, stripped of the distance that always protected him. The image of the jailer and the prisoner burning in the same chamber is the show's way of collapsing the gap between them, a detail heavy with meaning about where his long reign leads. 96. The whole silo is built on a single simple principle, hiding in plain sight, that whoever controls the truth controls the people. Every specific tool, the fake screen, the drugged water, the forbidden relics, the erased history, the memory wipes, is just another expression of that one idea, the management of what people are allowed to know. Seeing that principle makes the entire series click into focus. The silo is not really about concrete or dragons or machines. It is about information, about a population kept obedient because it cannot access its own past or its own world. Once you understand that the true battleground is the truth itself, every Easter egg and every mystery becomes part of the same story, the long fight over who gets to know what is real. 97. The recurring image of reflections and screens runs quietly through the show. From the great false window in the cafeteria to the visors, the cameras, and the surfaces that show people versions of their world. Again and again, the silo presents its residents with images rather than reality, mediated views they mistake for truth. That motif is the visual heart of the whole story. The silo is a place where people trust screens over their own senses, where the most important window is a lie, and where seeing is precisely what cannot be believed. Every reflective surface is a small reminder of the central deception, a world experienced through images the powerful control, and learning to distrust the picture is exactly what sets Juliet apart. 98. The show quietly suggests that even the syndrome, the stigmatized illness that afflicts people like Billings, may be tangled up with the silo itself, rather than being a simple natural ailment. In a world that drugs its water and hides the truth of the surface, an illness no one fully understands invites suspicion. That possibility turns a piece of character detail into another thread of the mystery. If the syndrome is a side effect of the silo's manipulations, or a marker the system uses, then the shame attached to it is one more cruelty layered on its victims. The detail is small, but it fits the show's pattern perfectly, where nothing about the body or the mind is ever fully free of the silo's hidden hand. 99. For all its secrets, the silo keeps circling one quiet question: how a whole world could be lost and replaced by a buried lie without its people ever knowing. That question, echoed even in the name of the season's promotional website, is the heartbeat under every Easter egg and every mystery in the series. It is the detail that gives the whole story its sorrow. Beneath the plots and the reveals lies a simple grief, the sense of an entire living world quietly stolen and paved over with concrete and deception. Every hidden clue is, in the end, a piece of that larger question, a fragment of the answer to how humanity came to sleep inside its own graves and forget the sky. 100. The biggest Easter egg of all may be the show's central trick, that the silo you watch is only one of many, and that the story you think you are following is a single thread in a far larger design. Every detail, every relic, every whispered secret is a piece of a puzzle that stretches across dozens of silos and hundreds of years. That is the quiet invitation the whole series offers. Silo rewards the patient watcher, the one who remembers a duck-shaped toy, notices a roll of tape, or catches a number spoken in passing, because all of it connects in the end. The show is one long Easter egg hunt disguised as a mystery, and the deepest pleasure of it is knowing that everything eventually means something.